Good afternoon or good evening, whenever you are listening to this. This is another episode of One Door at a Time, the ninth episode to be exact. I am Jason Richardson, your host, if you will. I am the Vice President of Security National Life's Home Service Companies. And with me today, I've got Mr. Lee Stewart. Lee, how are you doing today?
Doing fine.
Lee is our manager in South Carolina. And after years of trying to bait him over, we finally won him over to the dark side, so to speak, and just recently started with us in this capacity. So Lee is our guest today, and is pretty customary with all of our guests. We start off by just telling everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into the insurance business in Pacific, the home service business.
Again, my name is Lee Stewart. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I got into the insurance business right out of college in 1979. I worked for a local company here in Charleston, which is still in existence. And I was with them for about a year and a half. And as you do as a young college student or graduate, you're still trying to find your way. So I went with other avenues for quite a few years and ended up in the insurance business as a career in December of 1999 and worked with a company here in Charleston as a sales manager, as a district manager and an agent when I first began. And so I've been in the business about 24 years, and that's how I started my career in Charleston.
So you actually got back into the business in December of '99. That's when I started. I got my license in April of 2000. So a few months after you there. So was that the first company you worked for? Was that Atlantic Coast Life?
That's correct.
Okay. It was a good guess. We didn't rehearse that, but I know that they are a local company. Actually, at the time of this recording, I'm actually in Charleston with Lee, meeting with agents, new agents up here, and talking to other prospective agents. But so Lee, you've been in the business for about 24 years, been with a few different companies. Obviously, we're one of them. Just want to there's always some funny stories as it relates to this business. I and other agents have joked that what we do should be put in a book. Well, I'm never diligent enough or motivated enough, I don't know, to put everything in a book and write it all down, all these stories that people I've heard and experienced over the years. And so this podcast is kind of the out for me for doing that. So, having said all that, we like to talk about some of the funniest moments in this business because as we used to joke, I don't know if we wrote a book, what section of the bookstore it would go in. Would it go into true crime, romance, fiction? I mean, I don't think that people that have never been in this business before, even the insurance business, like the ordinary side of the business, dealing with the doctors and lawyers or business owners, et cetera, I don't think that they fully grasp some of the uniqueness of our side of the business with all the stories that we have to tell. Only the names are changed to protect the guilty. So I'm not going to call any names. And this is a family friendly podcast. So, Lee, with all that in mind, what about one of your funniest stories in the business?
Well, there's a lot of stories, as you mentioned. I mean, you could write a book as an insurance agent if you've been in the business for a long time. One of the funniest stories that hits me is when I first started with the second company here in Charleston, and I did all my training with my sales manager, and I went in the field for the very first time by myself, which is kind of an experience if you've never done it before. So I had the first appointment by myself. Got there, I never forget her name. I won't mention it today, but I do know her name and still know her today, and her business is still on the books. But I did my first application with her, and then she told me she had six foster children that she fosters, and she's actually adopted. So I ended up with seven sales that day. Called my sales manager. It was like seven apps for 200 and something dollars, which back then was pretty good. So I'm flying high and calling the sales manager, telling him how good what I did. He said, "Great job. You need some help?" I said, "No, I think I'm all right." So I had another appointment that afternoon with a gentleman named, they called him Mr. Dan, and I remember him to this day. And so I sat down with Mr. Dan and we took his application and chit chatted, and he liked to talk. So it took a while. But anyway, we got through the application and there was no health problems. There was no surgeries. There was no nothing that he would tell me. And I'm new to the business, so I'm trusting everybody so they'll give me the correct information. And so I left there with another app for about $100. So I got a $300 day going, and I didn't know what that meant, but it meant pretty good to the sales manager. So anyway, we get through the application, thanked him for his business, got a few emergency contacts for referrals, and then I went back to the office and turned in and was, kind of crawling a little bit as a rookie. Um, so the next day, get an email, an email, got a call from the underwriting and said that his policy had been declined. So I told my sales manager, he said, "Well, let's go back out and talk to him. Evidently, he didn't tell you something." So we get back out there, and we pull up and see Mr. Dan, and he's out there talking to people like a politician. Everybody knows him. So I said, "Mr. Dan, I need to talk to you about your application." And he said, "Okay." And so come on in. So we went in and kind of started reviewing his application again. And when I was there the first time, he told me, "Man, I'm as healthy as a horse." He said, "I don't take any medications. I'm pretty good for an old man." He was about 62 then. I guess he thought he was old. But so we get talking some more, and he said, "I told you, my health is great. I just got my 6 months checkup." I said, "Well, what was the checkup for?" He said, "Well, I had heart surgery and open heart surgery about 7 months ago." And he said, "I said, you had open heart surgery 7 months ago." He said, "Yeah, but I don't take any medications. I'm as healthy as a horse." He said, "Look right here." And he unbuttoned his shirt and he opened it up and he had a scar all the way down his stomach. And I'm going, "Okay, this is a lesson to be learned." So I explained to him how this works. I don't think we pivoted to another policy, a greater policy back then. I don't know if we had it, but it was really funny. It actually helped me in the business because now I knew not to take everything that somebody tells you is always the truth.
Yeah, I got some fun, similar story to that. I had in the business went out there to an appointment, and these people wanted a very large policy. The company I worked for sold large term policies, and so they were a younger couple, so I didn't think nothing about it. I think I wrote them I know I wrote them $1 million policy a piece. Didn't think nothing about the house they were living in or how they were going to pay it. I was just so interested in selling $1 million policy. So I was all high on a horse, man. I thought I was big stuff. Well, then when I got it back from the home office after they did the medicals and the phone interviews that typically follow those size policies, they got docked down to $250,000 policies. And I was like, whoa, 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 what's wrong? These are young people. They're healthy. I don't understand. And so then come to find out, and we joke about this, but customers typically think they're talking to Jesus when they're talking to the home office interview. And, as a home office employee, is the reason why we do phone interviews because we know, hey, it's something about saying you're going to be on a recorded line and this call is going to be monitored and recorded. People just say, oh, maybe that we should just put politicians on a recorded line. Maybe that'll make them more honest. Who knows? But well, come to find out, they said they never drank any in their life, but then when they told the home office, they said they drank like a fish. Then they also smoked uh, an illegal substance that's now somewhat legal in certain states, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So, like you, Lee, I learned a valuable lesson that don't just trust everything on the surface. Now, backing up a little bit, you mentioned emergency contacts, and if you all did not listen to episode 8, which I talked with Larry Burton, that's one of his sales tips that he used was emergency contacts, because that's a great way to get in touch with that next person. It's also it's more evasive or less threatening way to ask for referrals, because sometimes when we ask a customer, hey, who do you know that I need to talk to about insurance? They feel like, well, if I give them that name, those people are going to get mad at me. Or I can't guarantee that those people are going to treat you right. So I don't want to do wrong by you. So I don't give you that name. Whereas if you just say, I need to know who I need to contact and how to get in touch with them if you die, or if I can't get in touch with you, like if I can't find you, I don't want your insurance to lapse. Who can I call? They're like, oh, well, yeah, so and so. It's a lot easier that way. It's just a different way to ask the same question, right?
That's correct.
So, and so that kind of segues us into maybe a sales tip that you have for the listeners out there.
Well, I was trained by a gentleman that was in the business for years. He retired a millionaire from the insurance business. And so when I started with that company in '99, I asked him, I know you're the district manager, but I'd like to be trained by you since you pretty much are the best and you've been in the business. So he agreed. Sales manager wasn't real happy, but he trained me, and I learned this. He was a really hard worker, and he really didn't want you to go home until the job was completed. And I learned that, that you stay out in the field basically till you create something if you can, for as long as you can. But I learned that, when you are in the insurance business or any other business and you have a business card, you should introduce yourself to whoever you can on a daily basis. I consistently try to meet somebody new every day. The rule says 10-3-1. You get 10 people, you ask 10 people for an appointment, three might show and one might sell. Your percentages or mine might be higher or lower, but I try to let everybody know what I do. Uh, and a lot of people are afraid to write their relatives or scared to ask their relatives because, oh, you're an insurance man. You just want to make a sale. Well, you try to cover as many people as you can because we're in the business to help people. And so I've always been taught, especially by this gentleman, and I've kind of lived and worked by it. You help people get what they need, and you'll always get what you need. So that's kind of one thing I've stuck to.
Yeah, and especially when I was new in the business, I'm sure you were the same way as well. You mentioned the hesitancy to write your relatives or ask them about insurance because, hey, it makes Thanksgiving dinner appear a little bit, feel a little bit differently, taste a little differently, right?
Yeah, it does.
But you know what makes Thanksgiving dinner taste more differently is if you have a family member die with not enough insurance, and here you are, an insurance agent who could have written them. So
And the other
that's a
side of the
real
coin on that is if you did write them, you did a good service for the
right.
family, yourself, and everybody around you that you did help that person.
And they were able to bury their family member with dignity. So yeah, you're right. That's the other part of that is if you did your job, then that's more people. And so I because I don't feel like my in-laws are going to listen to this podcast, I guess. My wife's grandfather died, and luckily, his wife, my wife's grandma, was still working at the time, and I wasn't in the insurance business yet, and so she had $3,000 to bury him. Now, this was a few years ago, so it was it was not quite as expensive to bury somebody then what it is today at the time of this recording. However, it was still more expensive than $3,000. So when I got in the insurance business, my wife's grandma and my wife's mother were some of my first customers that I wrote up. And my wife's mother died in 2008. So she had had that policy for like 6 years or 7 years at that time. Even though it was a graded policy, it was in full benefit. Well, when my wife's mom died, my wife's grandmother, who took care of the funeral arrangements, was the beneficiary. She's actually the one that paid the thing. She was able to bury her daughter with dignity and even had some money left over with. So, again, it really hits home. And I've mentioned this on other podcasts. A lot of people feel like, and I know this was this way for me, maybe you, Lee, was when I really got into the business was the day that I delivered my first death claim check. And I was like, oh, wow, it's not just me making a sale and making a good commission. I'm really helping these people out. And when I delivered that death claim check, but when you're able to do it for your family, and then they're like, "Hey, he didn't just sell me, and I didn't just make the sale because I was desperate for a sale." That's really makes a big difference to there. So if you haven't already done so, if you're in the insurance business, be sure to talk to everybody, like Lee mentioned, even your family, but especially your family, because again, you don't want to have that Thanksgiving dinner where people have to talk about how they couldn't bear their loved one, and here you are as an insurance agent.
You
Uh,
really should be proud of what you do,
yeah,
and you should let people know what you do because if you don't tell them, they don't know. And then you're looking after the fact that well, wow, I should have done this or I should have done that. So be proactive, be proud of what you do, and try to greet as many people as you can. Gas station, you get gas, you should go inside and buy a pack of crackers and at least give out a business card. Somebody putting the gas in their car next door, just chit chat with them, small talk, and you never know what happens.
Well, in talking about being proud of what you do, I think that especially in the home service business, for people when they first get in, or especially people nowadays, since there's so few of us out there, they have a tendency to not be proud of what they do. And so, people ask you, "Hey, what do you do?" And I go, and you just kind of mumble it out because you don't want people to know that you actually go out and collect premiums. But it's kind of a pride thing for me now. Hey, I still do things the old-fashioned way. If my customers want me to see me every single month, then that's what I'm going to go out there and do. I provide that service. I don't put them through to some uh, customer service number with people that can speak English but don't necessarily understand English. I don't put them to have to wait on queue on hold in the home office somewhere. I give them personal service, and that's a point of pride for me. And it should be for everybody that's in the home service business, because there's only a handful of companies that even market in this way anymore. And so you are one of the few, the proud, the home service agent. Sorry, Marines, I stole your line, but it's a fun business because there's a lot of people that you get to meet, the relationships you get to build, as I'm sure there are in other business segments. But because of the way that we conduct ourselves in our business model, these customers often become family. We visit not only when we're wanting to collect premiums, but we visit when a baby's born or visit when somebody passes away. You see them in Walmart, and you're not ducking and dodging or hiding behind the clothes because you're like, oh man, I did them a disservice. I don't really want to see them. But you're going up and saying, hey, was recently working with Don Kahn, who was that Lee knows as well. And Don was on one of the earlier episodes of One Door at a Time. And we were working together, and people were saying, hey, how's the family doing? And all this other kind of thing. And one of them actually referred to my oldest son as Junior. And Don goes, you have a son named Junior? And I said, no, I don't have a son named Junior. She's talking about my oldest son, who also sells insurance as well. And it's just because having built that relationship with people, people know that I have a big family. They've seen many of my kids, et cetera, et cetera. We talk about our families. So it's not me just going in there and grabbing some money and taking off, before anybody sees me. Lee, you have anything you might want to add to that?
Well, relationship building is what it's about, and you're correct. You build these relationships. My wife and I'll be out at dinner somewhere, and we've been in Charleston since high school, and people will say, "There's my insurance man," and that makes me really feel good. When you build relationships, they don't buy just from a company. I mean, you can buy from the big giant corporate companies that are all over the world, or you can buy from a small company. So, but they buy from you, the agent. They're not building their relationships with the company, they're building it with you, and they trust you. So that's a great thing.
Yeah, yeah, and so over the course of years and times and being there for them, that you built that trust, and it's a great relationship business. So Lee, we're kind of setting this plane in for a landing. That was not a segue into the next. I've been doing segues this whole time. That's not a segue into where I'm going, because after I record this, I'll actually be catching a flight out of South Carolina here as we record this. But uh, as we set this podcast in for a landing, I normally about this time start talking about Security National in particular, because if you're listening to this out there and you're like, yeah, I know I've collected and I've got all these stories too, and I like to talk about them, but nobody ever does home service anymore, and there's just nobody to talk to, and maybe you still collect, but you don't like the company that you're working with anymore. Unfortunately, in this day and age, with the downside of not having a lot of competition out there, is that you don't have a lot of choices out there, right? Because in the free market society, consumers and or employees benefit from having a lot more choices out there, because a lot of companies have chosen to go different marketing ways. People in ivory towers come up with the best contracts they think, but they've never done what they're asking everybody else to do, so it never works. They're kind of going astray, if you will. Here at Security National, we know what business we want to be in. We have other business lines, and we let those other business lines work within their functionality and lanes. Here, we're home service through and through. And it's funny, I giggle because yesterday, Lee, when we were having that meeting, one of the attendees said, we were talking about the new business recap sheet. He said, "Oh, that's just like the old days." I laugh every time I hear that because that is a mark of pride for me because yes, that's what I want. Not that I'm technologically averse. We have agent portal, we have electronic premium payer where we can post our payments that we collect online. We don't collect weekly premiums anymore, so we're not in the stone ages here. But at the same time, I look back at companies when they were successful in marketing as a home service company. What did they do right then that I can replicate now? And so when anybody says, "Hey, that's just like they used to do," I said, "That's great. That's what I want." Because when people come to work here, I want them to say, "That's how it was when I loved this business." I talk to people, and Lee, I'm sure you have too. We've both been those people at times where we were so burnt out from other companies because they rode you hard. They didn't appreciate anything you do because we talk about some of the fun times, but there's also some rough times, right? Where Miss Jones or Miss Smith didn't want to pay her insurance. You have your lapses are higher than usual. You're not making as many sales as you like to make. So there's some downtimes too, right?
That's correct.
So we've been those people that were frustrated when the company that we were working with felt like they didn't have our back. Okay, they were really just looking out for the corporate dollar. Nothing wrong with that because they're in business to make money. But I believe that the most successful companies are the ones that have that win-win-win contract, right? They have a contract that the customer wins when they buy it. They have the coverage they need at an affordable price when they need it the most. They have an agent contract to incentivize that agent to go out there and get that business. And then they have a contract that the company can then in turn take those monies, reinvest those monies in such a way that the company's successful as well. So that win-win-win contract. And here at Security National, we have just that. So if you are a home service agent who likes what you do but don't like who you're doing it with anymore, feel free to reach out to myself or Lee. Both of us are on LinkedIn. And you can reach out to us there, or you can go to our website at www.snlhomeservice.com and click the contact us link and connect with us there because we would love to talk with you. And if you're not in South Carolina, you're in another state, we operate in 18 of them. If you're in one of the other states and talking with me, I can put you through to one of my managers that covers those areas there. Or if you've never been in the insurance business before, but it sounds like a fun thing, maybe you were like me, broker than Job's turkey, and needed a new new avenue to pay for a budding family at the time. My wife was pregnant with our second child. We have six, for those who don't know. And so my budding family at the time, I needed a way to pay for all this. And seeing that person drive up in what I thought was a brand new car, I said, that's the business I want to be in. But if you're like that, we train you too. We can help you get your license. We can help you get into this business. So feel free to contact us via those same channels, whether LinkedIn, through the website, www.snlhomeservice.com, and we can get you to the right person. Talk with you about the opportunity some more than what we're going to bore people with on a podcast here. Talking about podcasts, if you're listening to this, whether on Spotify or on YouTube, maybe eventually iTunes. Wherever you're listening to this, be sure to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, bell notification, and applicable sign of appreciation, so that and share it out, maybe with other home service agents. Or people that are interested in listening to a couple of old people ramble, that too, because we are subject to do that. Lee, anything else? Any more thoughts?
Just real quick about Security National. I started as an independent agent in 2015 and, came on board recently as a manager. But if I had to say anything about the company, they are really, really agent oriented. The home office employees are really nice. They're very helpful. Anytime I've had a question, I get my question answered. But the biggest thing is I found a group now that you can work with and be happy with what you're doing. And if I had to start over my career coming out of college, I would have not only started like I did, I probably would have stayed in the business if I knew, now what I knew then, or knew then what I knew now. I would definitely stay in the business, and Security National would probably be where I would start.
Well, John Maxwell said it best when he said he was approached by somebody and said, "Man, if I'd only heard you 10 years ago, how far along would I be?" He said, "No, you wouldn't." He said, "You wouldn't have wanted to hear me 10 years ago because I didn't know any of what I know now 10 years ago, right?"
That's correct.
So aside from that, I get your point, and I tell people all the time, and I think that I've thought this the same as anybody else that man, if I had all those sales that I had with the various companies that I was with, if I had them here and I was still earning renewals off of those policies that I sold 23 years ago when I got started in this business, then man, I'd be way farther along. But again, all those companies, the good and bad experience with some of those companies, because some of those no longer operate in the home service area anymore. But all the good and bad of those other companies, they taught me an awful lot. So, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today had I not gone through those experiences back then. But yeah, if you're young, whether you're old, uh, we offer an independent agent situation, so you can actually work with us as a side hustle, if you will, to build into a bigger part of your career. You don't have to take a leap if you're not sure of having been in the insurance business before. And if you are with, say, a captive company out there, don't let them hold you captive. Captive sounds so mean, like slavery or something. Like nobody likes that. So if they're holding you captive out there, there might be a reason because they know there's better opportunities out there for you. So don't let the fear of the unknown, because the basic thing that you do, which is see the people, tell the story, treat them right, and good things happen, that's everywhere you go. And here at Security National, we can certainly give you a contract that you can be proud of and work within. So, as we wrap this up, Lee, again, thank you for, I guess, coming on board finally. You mentioned 2015. I've been trying to get him in a manager position since 2015. And so, thank you for coming on board and doing this podcast recording today. And thank you all for when you listen and sharing this out. And until next time, happy selling.